The Lumberjack's Beard by Duncan Beattie. Big Jim Hickory was a lumberjack. He lived by a forest in a little log cabin. He had big, burly shoulders and an even bigger, bristly beard. Every day, he got up and did his limbering up exercises. It's very important to limber up if you're a lumberjack. After a hearty breakfast of pancakes and maple syrup, Jim slung his big, trusty axe over his big, burly shoulder and headed out into the forest. Chop, choppity chop went Jim's axe. Timber! Echoing through the valley as he felled tree after tree after tree. After a long day of swinging, whacking, cleaving and hacking, Jim headed back to his cabin. That evening, when he was just about to go to bed, he heard a peck, peckety-peck at the door. Jim looked down to see a small and very cross bird. "I built a lovely new nest in my tree," shrieked the bird, "and you chopped it down." Jim scratched his big, bristly chin, and then he had an idea. "I suppose you could move into my beard," he said. "Very well then," said the bird, and in she flew. The next morning, Jim woke up earlier than normal due to the bird chirping away at the crack of dawn. He did his limbering up exercises, got dressed and ate his breakfast, with a little help from the new tenant in his beard. Jim's next job was to strip all the branches and leaves from the tree trunks and burn them all on a big bonfire. After a long day of chopping, snapping, burning and crackling, Jim trudged back to his cabin for a well-earned rest. No sooner had he laid down his axe than he heard a noise at the door. Scratch, scratchety scratch. He looked down to see a very fed-up looking porcupine. "Oi!" snapped the porcupine. "I needed those leaves and pine needles to make a nice cozy shelter. Where am I going to live now?" Jim thought and scratched his big, bristly chin. "Well," he said, "I suppose you could move into my beard too." He bent down and the porcupine crawled in. The next morning, Jim woke even earlier and attempted to do his limbering up exercises. He looked in the mirror, scratched his big, bristly chin. Yow! He got porcupine quills in his fingers. He tried to eat his breakfast, but lost his appetite when he noticed bird poo on his shirt. Jim's job that day was to float all the tree trunks down the river to the lumberyard. One by one, he rolled the logs into fast-flowing water. After a hard day of lugging, splashing, rolling and crashing, Jim staggered back to his cabin. Thwomp, thwompity thwomp went his door. He looked down to see a very angry beaver on his doorstep. "I spent all day building a nice new dam, and it got smashed to bits by those logs you threw in the river," he snarled. Without a word, Jim picked up the beaver and put him in his beard. Between the birds chirping, the porcupines prickling and the beavers thwomping, Jim didn't get much sleep that night. He was too tired to do his limbering up exercises in the morning, and the beaver's thwomping tail knocked his pancakes all over the floor. "That's it," cried Jim. "I can't take it anymore. You all have to move out today." "But where will we live?" gasped his friends. As Jim scratched his big, bristly chin, he had a bold but brilliant idea. He went into his bathroom, took out his trusty razor, and began to shave off his big, bristly beard. Then he piled it up on his porch, and the bird, the porcupine, and the beaver all moved into their cozy new den. That night, Jim slept better than he had for some time. He woke up and did some particularly vigorous limbering up exercises, put on a fresh plaid shirt, then he made an enormous tower of pancakes and maple syrup. After breakfast, Jim looked out of the window at the bare ground where his forest used to be and scratched his unusually bare, stubbly chin. He also had another brilliant idea. That morning, Jim took his trusty shovel and dug hole after hole after hole. And with his big hands, he planted tree after tree after tree. Jim's beard grew back over time. The trees took quite a bit longer, but it was worth the wait. The end. This is The Lumberjack's Beard by Duncan Beattie. I highly recommend that you get hold of this book and read it yourself. There are some links in the description, or I'm sure you can find it in your favourite bookshop.